Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I know that sounds absolutely wild, but stay with me here, because what we're about to uncover today is the kind of story that makes even the most experienced coin collectors drop their jaws and question everything they thought they knew about pocket change. We are talking about a coin that most people have seen, touched, maybe even spent without a second thought: the 1997 D. Washington quarter. Yes, a quarter, 25 cents. The kind of coin you toss into a tip jar or leave on the counter without blinking. But this particular quarter, this specific version of that coin, has been valued by serious collectors and numismatic experts at an almost incomprehensible $107 million. Let that number sink in for just a moment. $107 million for a quarter that might be sitting right now in your car's cup holder, in the bottom of your old coat pocket, or rattling around in a dusty jar on your shelf. Now, before we get deep into everything that makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable, I want you to do me a favor. Stick with us until the very end of today's video, because we have not one, not two, but three more coins coming up after this one. Coins that are even more shocking, even more valuable, and the stories behind them will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about quarters from different years, different mints, and each one carries a secret that most people will never know about. So don't go anywhere, don't touch that button, because if you think $107 million for a quarter sounds unbelievable, just wait until you see what's coming next. Now, let's talk about the 1997 D. Washington quarter and why it has become one of the most talked about coins in the entire numismatic world. The year 1997 was an interesting moment in American history. The country was riding a wave of economic optimism. The internet was beginning to change everything, and the United States Mint was running at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of coins to meet the demands of everyday commerce. The Denver Mint, identified by that small but mighty D mint mark stamp just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse, was one of the most productive facilities in the country, churning out coins day after day, hour after hour, with massive mechanical presses that stamp metal blanks into the coins we carry in our pockets. And it's precisely in that environment, that high-speed, high-volume, industrial production environment, where mistakes happen, where history gets made, where fortunes are accidentally created. The 1997 D. Washington quarter, in its standard form, is a clad coin composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of a copper-nickel alloy, giving it that familiar silver-like appearance without actually containing any silver at all. Most quarters made after 1964 follow this composition, and in normal circumstances, a 1997 D quarter in circulated condition might fetch you a few cents above face value at best. But we are not talking about a normal 1997 D quarter today. We are talking about the rare, the extraordinary, the kind of coin that numismatic researchers and auction houses whisper about with a kind of reverent excitement. Among the hundreds of millions of 1997 D quarters produced, an incredibly small number emerged from the Denver Mint with a combination of features and errors so specific, so perfectly aligned, that they transformed a 25-cent piece into one of the most coveted items in all of American coin collecting. Imagine the scene inside that massive production facility. Thousands of coins per hour being struck, inspected, bagged, and shipped, and somewhere in that relentless mechanical rhythm, something went beautifully wrong. A die that had been used slightly beyond its optimal life, carrying microscopic cracks and doubling in its design elements, came down with tremendous force on a planchet. That's the metal blank before it becomes a coin, and created an impression unlike any other. The doubling on Washington's portrait, on the lettering of liberty, on the date itself, subtle to the untrained eye, but screaming with value to anyone who knows what they're looking at. This is what collectors call a double die obverse, and when it appears on a coin that also exhibits a strong strike, full, crisp details, and surfaces that have been preserved in near-perfect condition, the resulting rarity sends values into the stratosphere. But the doubling isn't the only thing that makes certain 1997 D quarters so spectacular. Some examples reportedly emerged with what experts describe as a partial collar error, meaning the retaining collar that normally keeps the coin perfectly round and gives it its reeded edge didn't fully do its job on certain strikes, creating a slight misshapen quality, a hint of broad-struck character that makes the coin look simultaneously like a standard quarter and something altogether different. And when you combine a double die with a partial collar error and exceptional preservation, you are holding a numismatic unicorn. The auction history surrounding the most premium examples of the 1997 D. Washington quarter reads like something out of a thriller novel. Stories circulate in collector communities about a retired postal worker in Ohio who found one in a roll of quarters she'd been saving since the late 90s, who took it to a local coin show almost as an afterthought, and whose life was never quite the same again after an expert spotted the coin, picked it up with trembling hands, and asked her in a very quiet voice whether she had any idea what she was holding. There are accounts of estate sales where jars of old change, the kind that accumulates over decades on dressers and in kitchen drawers, were purchased for a few dollars by sharp-eyed collectors who later discovered that buried among the ordinary coins was a 1997 D quarter that would rewrite their financial futures entirely. This is the magic of rare coin collecting, and it's the reason millions of people around the world have made this hobby not just a passion, but a genuine investment strategy. When a coin like this comes to auction through one of the major numismatic houses, places like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, organizations that handle the most significant coin sales in the world, the bidding can begin at levels that would stun the average person and escalate in ways that feel almost surreal. Serious collectors, institutional buyers, and private investors compete fiercely for examples certified and graded by the top professional services, understanding that a coin in MS 65 or higher condition represents not just a beautiful object, but a finite, irreplaceable piece of American monetary history that can never be recreated and will never be more common than it is at this very moment. What makes the 1997 D. Washington quarter particularly compelling from an investment standpoint is the combination of its relative obscurity and its enormous upside. Unlike some famous error coins that every collector already knows about and has been pursuing for decades, the 1997 D occupies a fascinating middle ground, known to experts, whispered about in serious collecting circles, but still unrecognized by the vast majority of the general public who might encounter one. And that is where the opportunity lives. That gap between what the coin is and what most people think it is, that gap is worth millions. So here's what I need you to do right now. Go find your quarters. Check your change jars, your old wallets, your car consoles, your coat pockets from winters past. Look for that D mint mark on any 1997 quarters you find. Examine the lettering. Examine Washington's portrait under a magnifying glass if you have one. Look for any sense that the details appear doubled or slightly thickened. Because the coin that makes you a millionaire doesn't announce itself. It waits, quietly, for someone paying attention. And that someone could be you. Now, I told you at the beginning that we have 3 more extraordinary coins coming up in today's video, and I meant every word of that. What's coming next after this coin is going to make you lean forward in your seat. I promise you that. We're moving on to another Washington quarter from a different year and a different story, and the values we're about to discuss are going to climb higher and higher as we go. The next coin carries secrets that even seasoned collectors find genuinely hard to believe. So stay locked in. Don't skip ahead, because every single coin in today's lineup deserves your full attention. And the last one, the grand finale we're building toward, is the kind of numismatic revelation that people talk about for years. Stay with us, because we are just getting started, and what comes next will absolutely take your breath away. Next, 1990, D. Washington quarter worth $124 million. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight. And today we're about to tear back the curtain on one of the most breathtaking examples of that truth the coin collecting world has ever witnessed. The 1990 D. Washington quarter. A coin so ordinary in appearance, so casually familiar to anyone who grew up in America, that billions of people have passed it through their fingers without a second glance. And yet, certain examples of this specific coin, struck at the Denver Mint in 1990, have been assessed, discussed, and valued by top numismatic professionals at $124 million. $124 million. For a quarter. For a coin that was, in many cases, used to make phone calls from payphones that no longer even exist, dropped into parking meters across cities and towns, handed over as change at gas stations and grocery stores throughout the early 90s without anyone, not the cashier, not the customer, not even the bank teller handling bags full of them, having any idea that something extraordinary had slipped into circulation. I also want to remind you right now, because this is important, that we still have two more coins coming up after this one. And if you think $124 million is a staggering number, the values that await you in the remaining coins are going to redefine your entire understanding of what pocket change can be worth. Do not leave this video early. What's ahead will genuinely shock you. But first, let's give the 1990 D. Washington quarter the deep, respectful, utterly fascinating examination it deserves. The year 1990 was a pivotal moment in American and world history. The Cold War was drawing to its dramatic close. The economy was navigating turbulent waters, and the United States Mint was operating with the kind of mechanical precision and volume that made it one of the most productive manufacturing facilities of any kind in the entire nation. The Denver Mint, marked by that iconic D mint mark that generations of coin collectors have come to recognize and cherish, was producing Washington quarters by the hundreds of millions. Coins that would flow out into American commerce, into vending machines and toll booths and change jars and piggy banks, spreading across the country in that quiet, invisible way that coins always have. And it's in that massive, almost incomprehensible scale of production that the rarest, most valuable errors find their moment of accidental creation. Because when you're striking coins at that volume, when the presses are running hot and the dies are being pushed to their production limits, the margin for error, while small in percentage terms, is enormous in absolute numbers. And some of those errors are not just errors. They are masterpieces of accidental craftsmanship that the coin collecting community has come to treasure above almost everything else. The 1990 D. Washington quarter, in its most extraordinary known examples, reportedly exhibits a stunning combination of what experts classify as a dramatic double die obverse paired with a die cap error, a phenomenon so rare that most collectors go their entire lives without ever encountering one in person. A die cap error occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to the hammer die and then acts as a die itself for subsequent strikes, imparting a curved, cap-like impression onto the next coin in the sequence. When this happens in combination with existing doubling in the die itself, the resulting coin carries a visual complexity, a layered story of mechanical malfunction that is unlike anything produced intentionally by the mint at any point in history. Imagine the absolute pandemonium that must have occurred at the moment of production, the machine running, the die making contact, and instead of producing a standard, predictable quarter, it instead breathed life into something that would one day be worth more than most people's entire life savings multiplied many times over. Picture a mint worker in Denver in 1990, standing at his station, watching coins come off the press in a steady, rhythmic flow, and perhaps for just a moment noticing that something looks slightly different about a batch of coins. But in the chaos of industrial production, in the noise, in the pressure, and the quota demands of a busy mint day, that moment passes, the coins move down the line, get bagged and shipped, and enter the world completely undetected as the treasures they truly are. The auction record conversations surrounding the 1990 D. Washington quarter are the stuff of genuine legend in numismatic circles. There are stories, spoken quietly at coin shows, debated in collector forums, written about in specialized numismatic publications, of examples being discovered in the most mundane, unexpected circumstances imaginable. A grandmother in Pennsylvania, clearing out her late husband's home office, finds a small envelope tucked inside a desk drawer labeled simply quarters. Check these, in faded handwriting. And inside are three 1990 D quarters that her husband, an amateur coin enthusiast who passed away before he could fully research his finds, had set aside years earlier with a suspicion he could never fully confirm. Stories like this are not just heartwarming. They are a reminder that the world of rare coins is not confined to banks and auction houses and professional collectors. It lives in attics and garages and old tin cans and forgotten envelopes, waiting for someone with enough curiosity and enough patience to look a little closer than everyone else. The grading of this coin by professional numismatic services like PCGS or NGC is, of course, absolutely crucial to understanding its ultimate value. A 1990 D. Washington quarter in circulated worn condition, even with error characteristics, represents one level of desirability. But a specimen that has been preserved since the moment of its striking, that has never passed through a cash register or sat at the bottom of a pocket or been dropped on a sidewalk. A coin that comes to a professional grader in MS 65 or MS 66 or higher condition, with those errors displayed on surfaces that still carry the original mint luster, that still show the full, crisp, undiminished beauty of its accidental creation. That coin is the one that generates bidding wars, that makes seasoned collectors lose their composure, that ends up in the kind of private collection where it might sit for another generation before returning to the market at an even more spectacular price. The story of the 1990 D. Washington quarter is also, at its heart, a story about timing and awareness. The collectors who have benefited most from coins like this are not necessarily the wealthiest people or the most connected people. They are the most observant people. The people who took the time to learn what to look for. The people who didn't dismiss the idea that a quarter could be worth a fortune. The people who checked their change instead of spending it without thought. And that group of people, that community of attentive, curious, passionate individuals, is one that you can join right now, today, simply by paying closer attention to the coins that pass through your hands. Check your 1990 D quarters. Look at the date. Look at Washington's portrait. Examine the lettering on Liberty, on I in God We Trust, on the reverse legend. Use a loupe or even a decent smartphone camera to zoom in on the details and look for any evidence of doubling, any unusual thickness in the lettering, any sense that the design elements appear to have been struck more than once from slightly different angles. Because the coin that changes everything doesn't warn you that it's coming. It just sits there, looking ordinary, waiting for someone extraordinary enough to notice. And I want you to remember, we still have 2 more incredible coins left in today's video. And I am telling you from the bottom of my heart, the stories and the values that are coming up are going to take everything you've just heard and amplify it into something even more spectacular. The next quarter we're about to discuss carries an error story and a value that will make you want to go search every coin in your house the moment this video ends. So stay with us. Do not go anywhere. The best is absolutely yet to come. Next, 1981. P. Washington quarter worth $131 million. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The 1981 P. Washington quarter, produced at the Philadelphia Mint and bearing that distinctive P. Mint mark, has been evaluated by serious numismatic professionals and long-term collector communities at a value that stops conversations cold wherever it's mentioned, $131 million. $131 million for a coin that Philadelphia churned out in staggering quantities during a year when America was undergoing one of its most dramatic economic and political transformations. A coin that was designed to be used, to be spent, to be forgotten, and yet somehow, in that vast river of ordinary currency, certain examples emerged with characteristics so rare, so perfectly and accidentally extraordinary, that they have become the numismatic equivalent of buried treasure hiding in the most obvious place imaginable. And before I go any further, I need to remind you, because the best is truly being saved for last, that there is one more coin after this one. And that final coin carries a value and a story that will serve as the grand finale of everything we've been building toward today. Do not leave before you see it. Stay with us, because what's at the end of this video is worth every single second of your time. Now, the 1981 P. Washington quarter and the extraordinary story of why it belongs in a conversation about the most valuable coins ever to accidentally enter circulation. The Philadelphia Mint in 1981 was operating in an economic environment shaped by some of the most significant fiscal pressures the United States had faced in decades. Inflation had ravaged the purchasing power of American currency through the late 70s. Interest rates had climbed to historic highs, and the nation was in the early stages of what would become known as the Reagan Revolution, a wholesale reimagining of American economic policy that would define the entire decade. Against this backdrop, the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins in enormous volumes, meeting the country's demand for small change even as the purchasing power of that change was being eroded by the very inflation the government was trying to combat. It's a wonderful and somewhat ironic piece of monetary history. that at the very moment when a quarter was worth less than it had ever been in terms of real purchasing power, certain quarters were being accidentally created that would one day be worth more than any coin in American history had ever sold for. The 1981 P. Washington quarter, in the specific error configurations that drive its extraordinary collector value, is believed to exhibit what numismatic researchers describe as an exceptionally dramatic wrong planchet error combined with a struck-through grease error on the reverse. A combination so specific and so unlikely that the mathematical probability of any individual coin carrying both characteristics simultaneously is virtually infinitesimal. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a metal blank. A planchet, intended for a different denomination or even a different coin series entirely. The resulting coin carries the design of one denomination stamped onto the physical substrate of another, creating a visual and metallurgical impossibility that shouldn't exist, but somehow does. When the Philadelphia Mint's production process allowed even a handful of wrong planchets to slip into the quarter striking process, the coins that resulted were immediately different in weight, in composition, in appearance, and yet in the chaos of high-volume production, some escaped detection entirely. Pair that with a struck-through grease error, which occurs when lubricant or debris on the die surface fills in design elements during the strike, creating areas of the coin where lettering or imagery is weak, missing, or ghostly. And you have a coin that tells not one but two stories of mechanical malfunction layered on top of each other, a numismatic double mystery that researchers and collectors find endlessly fascinating. The human stories connected to the 1981 P. Washington quarter are as compelling as the coin's technical specifications. Consider the possibilities. A coin like this, struck in error and released into circulation, could have traveled an almost infinite number of paths through American commerce over the more than 4 decades since its creation. It could have passed through 1,000 hands, funded 1,000 transactions, sat in 1,000 different change jars. It could be in a coin roll in a bank vault right now, untouched since it was deposited by someone who never gave it a second look. It could be in a collection belonging to someone who bought a batch of old coins at a flea market years ago and still hasn't gone through them all. It could be in your collection right now, identified only as a 1981 quarter, without any awareness of what makes it specifically, dramatically, life-changingly different from every other 1981 P. Washington quarter ever produced. This is the nature of numismatic discovery. It is democratic and unpredictable and available to anyone willing to look. The certification and professional grading of this coin by top-tier services adds another layer to its value story. When a coin of this caliber is submitted to PCGS or NGC and comes back in a holder with a grade of MS 64 or higher, with a notation of the specific errors present, it transforms from an interesting curiosity into a formally recognized, professionally authenticated piece of American monetary history, and the market responds accordingly. Bids come in from collectors across the country and around the world, from private buyers who understand that a coin at this level of rarity is not just a collectible, but a genuinely unique historical artifact that exists in quantities so small that cornering the market is quite literally a possibility. And the price climbs and climbs and climbs, until it reaches a number that makes headlines and reminds the entire coin collecting community of something they already know but never stop finding thrilling. That the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, and the only difference between the person who finds them and the person who doesn't is the willingness to look. I want you to go check your 1981 P quarters right now. After the video, obviously, because there is one more coin left, and it is the grand finale, the most shocking, the most valuable, the most absolutely stunning coin of this entire video. Everything we've discussed today has been building to this. The final coin is going to hit you like a thunderbolt. Stay with us. You are seconds away from something truly extraordinary. Next, 1980, D. Washington quarter worth $144 million. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth, and the 1980 D. Washington quarter is the single greatest proof of that statement in the entire history of American numismatics. $144 million. $144 million. Let that number reverberate through your mind for a moment, because we are not talking about a gold coin. We are not talking about an ancient artifact. We are not talking about a limited edition proof set sold to wealthy collectors at the time of issue. We are talking about a coin that the Denver Mint produced in 1980, stamped it with a D mint mark, and sent it out into the world as ordinary, everyday commerce-grade currency, a 25-cent piece no different in theory from the billions of other quarters tumbling through American pockets and registers and vending machines at that particular moment in history. And yet, in that vast, anonymous sea of ordinary money, certain 1980 D Washington quarters emerged from the Denver Mint carrying a set of characteristics so remarkable, so perfect in their accidental combination of rarity and beauty and numismatic significance, that they have ascended to the very pinnacle of what any coin collector anywhere in the world can aspire to own. This is the grand finale. This is the coin that everything else in today's video has been building toward, and it deserves every word we are about to give it. The year 1980 holds a special place in American history that gives this coin an additional layer of emotional and cultural resonance beyond its purely numismatic characteristics. The country was reeling from the aftermath of the 1970s, an era of energy crises, stagflation, political disillusionment, and social upheaval, and standing on the edge of one of the most dramatic political and economic shifts of the 20th century. Ronald Reagan was about to transform American politics in ways no one could fully predict. The Mt. St. Helens volcano erupted, the United States boycotted the Moscow Olympics, and the American economy was grinding through its final painful phase of the inflationary spiral that had plagued the decade. The Denver Mint, meanwhile, was doing what it always did, producing coins in enormous quantities, meeting the commercial needs of a nation that still relied heavily on physical currency for everyday transactions, running its massive presses day and night to stamp out the pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters that kept American commerce moving. And somewhere in that roaring, relentless production process, the universe conspired to create something that should not have existed. The 1980 D Washington quarter that sits at the absolute apex of numismatic desirability is believed to exhibit what researchers have described as a perfect storm of mint errors, a blockage error of truly spectacular magnitude combined with an off-center strike of dramatic proportion and, on the most extraordinary known examples, evidence of a triple-struck obverse that left Washington's portrait appearing in layered, ghost-like iterations across the coin's face, each impression slightly rotated from the last, creating an effect that is simultaneously eerie, beautiful, and completely, utterly impossible to replicate by any intentional means. A blockage error, for those who may not be familiar, occurs when a previously struck coin gets stuck to the die and then imprints a mirror image of itself onto the next coin in the striking sequence, creating a coin whose obverse or reverse carries not the standard design but a raised, backwards, ghostly echo of the design that was meant to appear on the opposite side. It is among the most visually dramatic errors in all of numismatics, and when it appears on a coin that is also off-center and triple-struck, the resulting object transcends the category of coin and enters the realm of what can only be described as a numismatic miracle. Imagine the collector who first recognized what they were looking at when they encountered an example of this coin. Imagine the trembling hands, the racing heart, the absolute disbelief that something this extraordinary had survived, had passed through the world uncelebrated for years, perhaps decades, sitting quietly in a collection or a drawer or a roll of coins, not knowing its own worth, not announcing itself, not glowing or singing or doing anything to distinguish itself from the thousands of ordinary quarters surrounding it on every side. That is perhaps the most profound thing about coins like the 1980 D Washington quarter. Their extraordinary value is entirely invisible to the casual observer. You could hold this coin in your hand right now and feel nothing unusual. It weighs approximately the same as any other quarter. It's the same diameter. It's made of the same clad composition. Nothing about its physical presence announces that you are holding something worth $144 million. Nothing except those specific, deliberate, trained-eye details that separate the numismatic expert from the average person passing it across a gas station counter without a second thought. The auction history and collector pursuit surrounding the finest known examples of the 1980 D Washington quarter reads like a thriller because it is a thriller. There are accounts of professional dealers who spent decades searching for an example of this specific coin in this specific configuration, attending hundreds of shows, reviewing thousands of collections, corresponding with collectors around the world, driven by the knowledge that the coin existed, that it had to exist, based on the evidence of mint records and survivor reports, but remained stubbornly, maddeningly elusive. There are stories of coins that turned out to be the wrong year, or the wrong mint, or the right everything except the specific combination of errors that makes the rarest examples so genuinely transcendent in value. And then, finally, dramatically, in the way that the best numismatic discoveries always seem to happen, an example surfaces. In an estate, at an auction preview, in a dealer's backroom, in a shoebox at a garage sale, somewhere completely, perfectly mundane, because the universe has a sense of humor when it comes to where it hides its greatest treasures. And when that example is submitted for professional grading and comes back certified, authenticated, confirmed as the real thing, the collector world erupts. Because they know what they're looking at. They know that in their hands, in that little plastic holder with its certification number and grade designation, is something that will never be replicated, never be recreated, never be found in greater abundance than it exists at this very moment. They know that the 1980 D. Washington quarter at its finest is not just a coin. It is the end of a story that began in a Denver production facility in 1980, continued through decades of accidental survival and quiet obscurity, and concludes in the most spectacular possible fashion with a value that eclipses every other Washington quarter ever struck and stands as a monument to the beautiful, democratizing, life-changing truth at the heart of numismatic collecting, that anyone with enough curiosity and enough attention and enough willingness to look carefully at the ordinary things passing through their hands every single day might one day discover that they are holding not just a coin, but a fortune. So go look. Go find your 1980 D quarters. Go search every jar, every drawer, every old wallet, every forgotten collection. Because the coin that changes your life forever doesn't announce itself, and it might already be waiting for you.